Now, counterfeit medicine is fake medicine. It may be contaminated or contain the wrong or no active ingredients at all. The multi-billion-dollar global trade in bogus medicines is responsible for around 700,000 deaths a year, and that is only TB and malaria victims. Joining us now to talk strategies to eliminate fake medicines in Africa is Dr. Rashim Motilal, and he is the director at Sanofi Medical. Rashim, thank you so much for joining us. How big is the counterfeit drug industry worldwide?
It's actually a very big industry. It's actually increasing all the time. Last stats we've seen from WHO show that this industry is worth around $75 billion US. It's actually bigger than the illicit narcotic trade in the world.
Right. And so if we looked at the drivers behind the growth of this industry, what's propelling the growth?
There are several factors that drive the growth of this industry. I think firstly, when you look at the access to medicines, there's certainly, as you know, around the world, inequities with regards to medicine access. So that's one driver. Second driver, I think, is now that we've actually got open borders and sort of free trade zones, and we have a global economy, it's much easier to access medicines through various portals. You can travel to another country, you can buy it online, and largely I think that the lack of regulation is what's driving this pandemic.
If we look at the tragic consequences of this industry, especially when we see figures like this where we're saying almost 700,000 people are dying each and every year, do you feel that governments have responded adequately to curb the growth of the industry?
I think several governments have. If you look at especially the developed countries, certainly they've got robust mechanisms in place. They've got well-functioning, efficient, robust health systems that regulate these drugs. And tight border controls. But other countries, more the developing countries, where we know that stats as high as 2/3 of drugs found in those markers are actually counterfeit medicines, that's a serious issue because we find that the poorest people are the ones who are most vulnerable and the ones who are facing the issue of counterfeit medicines. So I think it's the issue that it's taken most countries by surprise, firstly, and I think the fact that it's actually a global problem makes it very difficult for countries to deal with.
But where are countries losing the battle? Is it at the manufacturing plants? Is it labeling? Or is it in the movement of the medicines? Where are we getting the biggest loopholes coming through?
The biggest control actually is in these counterfeit or fake medicines getting into countries. So you find that at the border levels, there are lack of good controls that actually should be there to regulate with drugs into the country. So you find that there are inefficient mechanisms to control and to stop these drugs. That's the first thing. I think the second thing as well is that in countries with loose border controls or poor market controls, these countries are vulnerable then to fake medicines getting into their borders.
Let's look at some of the innovative responses that have come out of some countries, especially where countries have harnessed technology to try and take on this problem. Are there any examples that stand out for you as really leaders in innovation?
There's lots of examples. I can speak for my company, Sanofi being a multinational company and one of the largest drug companies in the world. We've taken the problem very seriously as part of our commitment to the prescribers of our drugs and patients ultimately who use our medicines. We've ensured that we protect their interests. We've got a lab in France that's dedicated to analyzing, detecting, and following the chain of counterfeit medicines. What we also do with our drugs, we actually label them with a unique code. And this code enables authorities to be able to scan the medicine and to be able to know that this is an authentic medicine, to know what the composition of the medicine is and where it comes from. So that's one way. Other companies are looking at radio frequency detection, so where you find that drugs are followed through and able to be traced through the entire supply chain. Those are some examples of innovative mechanisms to be able to trace and verify medicines.
At the core of this problem, it has to be about the cost of legitimate medicines.
Certainly.
So obviously regulation alone cannot be the panacea to solving this problem. What do you think is the fundamental shift that needs to happen to see the end of this industry?
I think the shift is firstly quite a few things. In many countries, counterfeiting is not even a criminal offence. That's the first thing, and therefore the penalties are actually quite light. So I think we firstly need a stronger sort of legal system to actually impose sanctions against counterfeit medicines. Then we need health authorities to be tougher on these medicines, to have stronger controls in place, to make sure that there's robust systems at borders to inhibit these drugs from getting into countries. And I think finally we need international cooperation. This is not a country issue, it's a global issue. It's getting larger. So we need all countries and all health organizations across the world to band together, including drug companies, and to take a concerted approach to this problem.